millions of Arabs in the region, dissidents and exiled folks, who are living in perpetual state of fear of persecution, constantly looking over our shoulders. I'll give you an example. We stand here today. If any of us, if any single one of us were to channel their inner Jamal, their pragmatic Jamal, and extend a peace offering, our hands with a peace offering to these authoritarian regimes, we would just be treated as their mortal enemies, and we would be just as targeted if we resisted them. Do you know why? Because these regimes are operating under the premise that they rule over us. Therefore, they get to choose for us. They get to choose when we are free to speak and when we have to be censored. They choose for us when we can be jailed or given our partial freedoms. They want to choose for us when we are traveling, when we can travel, and when we are banned. And even in exile. And even in exile, that they will hunt us down. They want us to be, we are mere subjects to them, and they rule over us with fear and with oppression. So we are left with no choice. We're damned if we resist, and we're damned if we don't. See, just like Jamal, all we want is a normal life. We want to live a life of family, routine. We don't want to go through this perpetual, compounded oppression with no breaks, where you have to wake up every single morning and check your phone if one of your friends or family members has been jailed, killed, tortured, or chopped up in a consulate. And again, as I said, what happened to Jamal is just an ugly and messy manifestation of everything that's been happening around the region. Is it now okay to start paying attention to the symptoms of authoritarianism, to the disease of authoritarianism, not the symptoms? Can media outlets, policymakers, and influencers talk about the same issues that Jamal got killed defending and shedding light on? Can we talk about Abdurrahman al-Sahdan of Saudi Arabia, who's been enforcedly disappeared since March 2018, and his brave sisters are going through hell trying to shed light on his story? Can we talk about Mustafa Nagar of Egypt, who's been enforcedly disappeared since September 28, 2018, just a few days before Jamal was enforcedly disappeared and killed it right here? Can we? You see, can we talk about the tens of thousands of political prisoners, the thousands of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances in the region? Why has that been the norm? Why does someone have to die such an heinous murder and get chopped up for the world to start paying attention to everything that's been happening in the region since the fall of the Arab Spring? You see, if they can't stop oppressing us, we won't stop resisting, because one thing is certain. Just as they are set in their ways to enslave their entire populations, we will not stop freeing ourselves and others. We might not have the resources to hire the best consultants to write our speeches and to prep us for our 60-minute interviews. Maybe we don't have these resources, but we have each other. And we have good people from around the world who are ready to stand by us out of the goodness of their heart. And we are smarter, and we are not restricted by the limitations of power. And history is on our side. Yes, we deeply grieve those that have fallen, like our beloved Jamal, but the Arabs have a profound tradition that's summarized in a poetic verse. إِذَا خَلَى مِنَّا سَيِّدٌ قَامَ سَيِّدٌ قَؤُولٌ بِمَا قَالَ الْكِرَامُ فَعُولُ. If one of us falls, another rises to speak and act as those that have fallen. So we will honor Jamal by carrying his message forward. The heinous crime committed against us was intended to intimidate us into silence. But instead, it was a lesson for us. It was a lesson for us in freedom. His murder only strengthened our resolve and cemented our belief in the values we and he held dear. We learned that it's okay to be afraid. We learned to speak freely and with courage, even when our hands are shaking and our voice are cracking. Rest in power, my friend. Your legacy lives on. Thank you.
Now we welcome Reporters Without Borders representative Erol Önderoğlu to the podium. Thank you.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear Hatice Cengiz, today we are paying tribute to Jamal Khashoggi, to whom the world owes justice. This is our moral debt to him and to those exposed to such horrific extrajudicial killings. Reporter Without Borders was present here for Jamal Khashoggi in the very first days of his assassination in front of this building where this heinous crime was committed just 1 year ago. Today, Reporter Without Borders is also mobilized in Paris, in London, in Washington for Jamal. Over the last year, Reporter Without Borders has campaigned for the creation of the position of Special Representative of United Nations for the safety of journalists. Today, RSF reiterates once again from Istanbul its request to UN to launch an investigation, international investigation into the Khashoggi murder. Today, we are happy to have among us the Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions, Agnes Kalamar. Her important report on Khashoggi murder clearly refers to a strong need to establish a standing instrument for the criminal investigation into targeted killings allegations or other acts of violence against journalists and human rights defenders. RSF deplores the reluctant attitude of international communities, which is not encouraging for a better world where impunity is not the rule. We call on democratic societies and countries to raise their voice, to reject any forms of reluctance, hesitations, or double standards when fundamental human rights values are questioned or challenged, in this example, in the most horrific way. Saudi Arabia should not be able to exercise the G20 presidency unless civil society and foreign leaders insist that it accepts the consequences, which must include guaranteeing press freedom, protecting journalists, and putting the light on this murder, including the release of more than 30 journalists remaining behind bars in this country. We expect a full accounting, and we think that sentencing perpetrators to death in Saudi Arabia would just be a way to silence them forever, to conceal the truth. Our organization remains committed until justice is made for Jamal Khashoggi. Thank you very much.
Now we welcome Amnesty International Turkey representative Andrew Gardner to the podium. Thank you.
I stand before you today, first and foremost, as a representative of the global Amnesty International movement, to say how humbled we are and how proud we are to stand with you today as the friends, as the colleagues, as the fiancé of Jamal, and how we will continue with you to call for justice. We will never give up on this. And our belief that the only thing that can guarantee justice is for an international, UN-led investigation with the power to interview all suspects, whatever their level in government or position of power, to see all evidence, to be able to visit every crime scene. And how much this contrasts with the sham trial process going on today in Saudi Arabia that is supposedly setting out to expose what happened. This process lacks the most basic due process, lacks any sort of independence, and is not in any way representing justice. It is a mockery of justice. How meaningless it is for the Saudi authorities to take claims of admissions of responsibility when they stand in the way of genuine justice. How meaningless it is when the Saudi Arabian authorities continue to ruthlessly, in fact, intensify the crackdown on human rights defenders, on women's rights activists, on journalists within the country in the year since their heinous murder of Jamal. It's all of our responsibilities to, of course, to call for justice, but also to be insistent in our unsilence against abuses continuing again and again in Saudi Arabia today. And as Amnesty International, we will not, whatever the silence of the international community in some quarters, give up on our demand for justice or our exposure of the continuing human rights abuses continuing every day in Saudi Arabia. Knows what happened. This process lacks the most basic.
Now we welcome Yasin Aktay, former MP and close friend of Jamal, to the podium. Thank you.
And is not in any way representing justice. It is a
Jamal
mockery
Khashoggi
of
dostları,
justice.
hepinizi
How
hürmetle ve
meaningless it
muhabbetle
is for the
selamlıyorum.
Saudi authorities
Dear
to
friends and colleagues of Jamal Khashoggi, I welcome you all with grace and gratitude.
Artık eminiz ki Cemal Kaşıkçı ismi bir sembol haline gelmiş olduğu için bu selamlama zannediyorum yetiyor. Neyin sembolü? Cemal Kaşıkçı artık insan haklarına saygının, özgürlüklerin, insan onurunun sembolü haline gelmiş. Dünyamızda cereyan etmekte olan birçok olumsuzluğu deşifre eden, afişe eden sembol bir isim haline gelmiş bulunuyor.
I think now welcoming you this way is enough because Jamal Khashoggi has truly become a symbol of goodness, of truth, of justice, of freedom of thought, and in the world that we live in and in the world that we occupy today, it is this symbol that guides us in the work that we do.
Bir bakıma o her gün dünyamızda, özellikle de bölgemizde cereyan etmekte olan benzeri birçok cinayetten birine kurban gitmiştir.
Unfortunately, Jamal has become victim to a murder which actually has a lot of similarities to other murders in the region.
Your work too is justice for Jamal. My call to you, persist, insist, expose for Jamal and for the other Jamals around the world. This is how we will amplify
Unfortunately, in our region today, there are murders that have gone beyond count. In Syria, for example, men, women, children are killed without discrimination in the tens, in the hundreds, and in the thousands.
And brave reporting. We will not forget. We will remember and we will not give up. Please do not give up. Please keep
In Egypt,
demanding
there
and
are
shining
people
your
that are
light
woken up in the middle
for
of the night to
justice.
be dragged
Thank
to
you
their
very
deaths, to
much.
be dragged to their jail cells, to be dragged to torture as well. Now we welcome human rights activist Mohammed Sultan to the stage.
Ne yazık ki İslam dünyasının birçok yerinde insanlar vahşi bir biçimde her gün katledilmektedir.
In Myanmar, in Kashmir, in Yemen, and in Libya, and in other places in the Muslim world, so many
November of
people have gone
2017,
victims
2
to
months
such
after
awful,
Jamal
atrocious crimes.
was in
Cemal
self-imposed
Kaşıkçı bütün bu
exile.
cinayetler arasından bir cinayet denilip
He got
geçiştirilebilir
DM on
mi?
his Twitter from Saud
The question
al-Qahtani.
is, can we discount this
He
murder
was with me
as
in the
just
car.
one
We were
among
on my way
those?
to, we were
Evet,
both on
aslında
our
Cemal Kaşıkçı bütün bu cinayetlere bize tekrar dikkat çeken, bize dünyamızda olup biten bütün bu olumsuzlukları kaim kılan, bunları mümkün kılan bir düzeni bize ifşa ediyor.
In fact, Jamal Khashoggi's murder has reminded us of these other murders, has become a symbol of what we need to stand for in this region.
Tarih boyunca birçok cinayetler işlenmiştir ama bu cinayetler içerisinde ilk cinayet olarak Kabil'in Habil'i öldürmesini anıyoruz. Yezid'in Hazreti Hüseyin'i katledişini zikrediyoruz, hiç unutmuyoruz. Çünkü bu cinayetler insanlık aleminde, insanlık hafızasında kalmış birer sembol cinayetlerdir.
Throughout history, there have been countless murders, but there are those murders that we never forget, such as the murder of Abel through the hands of Cain and other murders as well. However, these murders stand the test of time because they remind us of how truly atrocious this can be.
Kardeşlerinin Hazreti Yusuf'u bir atması da böyle tarihte büyük olaylardan, büyük cinayetlerinden bir tanesidir.
It's like the brothers throwing Joseph into the well. It is another example of murder that history will not forget.
Jamal Khashoggi'de cinayetlerden bir cinayet dediler. Bazı analizler duydum. Diyorlar ki ya bu kadar çok insan ölür. Uluslararası ilişkilerde devletler böyle şeyler yaparlar. Burada çok büyütmek lazım. Hayır, büyütmek lazım. Jamal Khashoggi'nin cinayeti bugün aslında bütün bu cinayetler, cinayet düzenine bize dikkat çekmiş bir isimdir.
I've heard a lot of commentary and a lot of analysis following the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, saying, who is Jamal Khashoggi? He's just one man among hundreds, among thousands who were killed in the region every single day. Why should we pay so much attention to this one murder? But I say to them, no. The whole point is that Jamal's murder and the murders in this region.
O ölümüyle aslında bizi uyandırdı. Bir tür Kerbela hadisesi yaşattı. Çağımızın Kerbelasını yaşattı. Ama ölümüyle, öldürülme tarzıyla bizi uyandırdı.
With his death and with the awful manner of his death, he has reminded us about the times that we live in and the things that we let fly us by, the things that we allow to happen to journalists around the world.
Onu neden öldürdüler? Çünkü düşüncelerinden korktular.
Why did they kill him? Because they were afraid of his thoughts.
Halbuki onu öldürdükleri için, belki de tam da onu öldürdükleri için bugün onun düşünceleri çok daha fazla canlı, onları çok daha fazla tehdit edecek hale geldi.
And yet it is precisely because they chose to kill him that his thoughts are going to live forever and his murder is going to be noticed by a community much larger than what knew him in his life. Therefore, they have shot themselves in the foot by allowing this murder to take place, by allowing us to notice about the atrocities in the region and the murders of journalists in the region.
Onun için düşüncelerden korkanlara, özellikle korkan diktatörlere söylüyoruz, diyoruz buradan mesajımız, düşüncelerden korkmanız sizin ecelinize çare değildir.
Thus we call upon so many dictators today, do not be afraid of thoughts, because your fear of these thoughts is precisely what causes you to have these problems and to face the world stage and the world press in the way that you have done today with Jamal.
Kaşıkçı kendi ülkesinin konsolosluğuna girerken, kendi ülkesinin yani bir ülkenin, bir devletin kendisine karşı bir cinayet işleyebileceğini aklının ucundan bile geçirmiyordu.
When he was going into the consulate of his own country, Jamal Khashoggi did not even imagine for a moment that he would be murdered on the very diplomatic soil that he was going into.
Çünkü devletler tabiatları icabıyla insanları öldürmek için değil, insanları yaşatmak için var olurlar ve yaşattıkları ölçüde de var olurlar.
Because states exist not to kill people, but to facilitate their life, the continuity and the happiness of their lives.
Bizler bu olayı ilk duyduğumuz andan itibaren çok değerli dostumuz, nişanlısı Hatice Cengiz hanımefendi bana bu olayı bildirdiği zaman, başıma bir şey geldiği zaman beni aramasını söylediğinde ben üzerime çok ağır bir sorumluluk hissettim ve hemen elimden geleni yapmaya koyuldum ama fark ettik ki bize haber verildiği anda zaten 2-3 saat önce ölmüştü bile.
When I first found out about this murder, when it was brought to my attention by the wonderful Mrs. Hatice Cengiz, when it was told to me that I was the one Jamal told her to call if anything went wrong while he was in Turkey, I felt the immense responsibility of that on my shoulders. But to my dismay, when I looked into it further, I realized that he had already been dead for 2 to 3 hours before her call.
Çünkü içeriye girdiği anda zaten ilk 10 dakika içerisinde öldürmüşlerdi ve gelen katil ekibin onu bir yere kaçırmak, ikna etmek gibi bir niyeti değil, tam tamına onu öldürmek için gelmiş olduğu, bütün planların buna göre yapılmış olduğu sonradan anlaşıldı.
Because Jamal Khashoggi was murdered within the first 10 minutes of his entrance into the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul. And it is this 10 minutes that proves to us that they had no intention of questioning him, of capturing him, of kidnapping him, but rather their intention was to murder him from the very beginning. That is what they had planned all along.
Dolayısıyla beni arama yönünde bana yüklenen sorumluluğun ben onun hayatını kurtarmak için değil, onun davasını gütmek için, onun uğruna kavga verdiği değerler ki o değerler hepimizin değerleriydi, benim de değerlerimdi. O değerler adına biraz daha aktif bir biçimde kavga etmek için, daha fazla onların mücadelesini vermek için üzerime yüklenmiş bir sorumluluk olduğunu hissettim ve o günden bugüne ne yaptıysam bu sorumluluk adına yaptım.
Thus, the responsibility that I felt on my shoulders from the first moment that I received that call, I now interpret that not as a call to find him and to ensure his livelihood. However, I interpret that instead as a duty to honor his message and to further his message in the world today. He represented values that both I and all of us believed in, and now it is my duty today to actively pursue those values and promote those values so that I may honor my responsibility to him.
Burada en azından büyük bir mutlulukla şunu söyleyeyim, bir teselliyle ama çok büyük bir mutlulukla kendi Cumhurbaşkanımız, liderimiz adına şunu söyleyebilirim ki olayı duyduğu andan itibaren olayı hiçbir hesabiliğe başvurmadan, hiçbir hesap gözetmeden tamamen adaletin, hukukun gereğinin yerine getirilmesi çerçevesinde bu konuyu ele almış olduğunu size ifade etmek isterim.
Furthermore, with immense gratitude and honor, I am happy to announce that President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan has been a part of this cause from the very beginning with us. From the very moment that he was informed of this atrocious murder, without any concerns for anything else, without any hesitation, he too has been on the case to find Jamal's justice and justice for people like him.
Evet, bugün de şu anda şu aşamadayız. Halen bu cinayetten doğan hukukun gereğinin yerine getirilmesini talep ediyoruz. Halen cesedinin nerede olduğuna dair bir açıklama duyabilmiş değiliz. Kendi sorumlulukları altında bu işin cereyan etmiş olduğunu söyleyenler bize halen bu olayın nasıl cereyan etmiş olduklarına dair sahip oldukları bilgileri paylaşmış değiller. Ve bizim talep ettiğimiz şey hiçbir şekilde siyasi bir talep değil, tamamen hukuki bir taleptir.
Currently, we still have not heard any information about the perpetrators, and justice evades us. We do not know where his body is, and we do not know the manner with which this atrocious murder took place. Therefore, whatever requests we may continue to make of the Saudi Arabian government, they are not political requests. They are only judicial requests and requests for human rights.
Talep ettiğimiz şey adalettir ve emin olun adalet kimseye zarar vermez.
What we demand is only justice, and we promise that justice has not harmed anyone, nor will it do so.
Bizim aleyhimize bile olsa adalet bizi ihya eder.
Even if it is against us, justice is a virtue, and justice is what we aspire towards.
Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you. Now we call Nihat Awad to the stage, who's the CEO and co-founder of Democracy in the Arab World Now.
Good afternoon, my sister Khadija, honored guests. Peace be to you. I'm a friend of Jamal's for the past 25 years. The first time I met Jamal was in 1994 in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, when he was a journalist to Al Hayat newspaper. I wanted to meet this man because he was a brilliant writer, and also introduced to him to my organization that I just founded in 1994 to defend the rights of American Muslims in the United States. Once I walked into his office and met him for the first time, I saw a tall, round-faced man stood with his white thobe, and as we sat down and discussed introductions, something caught my eye. As I was sitting and looking at him, I could not take my eye off a picture framed on the wall. That picture was of a man in Tiananmen Square in China, standing firmly and defiantly against a tank. Photos like this, you won't find them in offices in Saudi Arabia. From now on, and from that time on, that picture defined who Jamal Khashoggi was. Someone who was willing to stand up for his beliefs regardless of the power in front of him. Our relationship continued for 25 years, through even the year when he just moved to Washington, D.C. in self-exiled. And let me just address Jamal now. My brother Jamal, this is the third memorial event that I have spoken at in London, in Washington. It has been very hard. Today, standing in this spot in front of the consulate in which you were arrested, detained, tortured, and killed and dismembered, it is almost unbearable to be here at this moment. God knows what would be done to your body as we speak last year. For that, Brother Jamal, you have been the martyr of truth-telling. You spoke truth to power, and you proved yourself to be more powerful than those who killed you. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God the Almighty, to bless your soul and to grant you the highest station in paradise. They killed your body, but your spirit is still living and will continue to live. They silenced your voice in this consulate, but they amplified your message around the world. Several billions of people know who Jamal Khashoggi is and who killed him and who ordered the killing and why they killed him. Jamal, you wanted the world to know about the war in Yemen. They do now. There are actions in Congress to stop supporting our military and financing and supporting the Saudi military and the UAE military in Yemen. You wanted politicians and media to understand and act on the deteriorating conditions of political prisoners and jailed reformers. And now the world knows. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a little bit about also Jamal. He truly believed in the rule of law. He believed in building institutions instead of one-man rule. He lived by it, and he was killed for it. In October 2017, Jamal sent a series of excited tweets. He had just attended CARE annual banquet, the Council on American Islamic Relations, of which I am the co-founder and executive director. He recalled talking to me in 1994 when this organization was still started. And now he was saying that this organization is the source of his pride. He wanted to contribute to civil society in the Arab world. And a few months during his stay in Washington, he visited me and asked me to help him co-found an organization to promote democracy and human rights in the Arab world, similar to our work in the United States. He proudly called it Al-Fajr, dawn, democracy for the Arab world now. The world now knows very well what happened to Jamal, but the world now is not acting fast enough to bring the perpetrators to justice. My friend Jamal, for now, you rest in peace. But we, your friends, and many others, we will not rest until justice is done for you and for others. And to the world, Thank you for remembering Jamal today and what happened to him. But please do not forget the cause Jamal died for. Do not forget the many reformers who are still in jail in Saudi Arabia, including many women human rights activists like Lujain Hadloul, or scholars like Salman Al-Ouda, and many others, and also the issue of the illegitimate war in Yemen, and the lack of democracy in the Arab world, and the plight of the Palestinian people. The last message, the last tweet Jamal Khashoggi sent to the world was about the Palestinian people's plight in the occupied territories. Ladies and gentlemen, in concluding, the world needs to demand justice. If I can give you a small homework, continue to demand justice for Khashoggi. There is no justice until now. Don't let them get away with this brutal murder. We should bring him to justice. Don, the organization I co-founded with him, are pursuing legal actions against the perpetrators, including the one who ordered the killing. And we will not stop then. Support this organization. And also be like Jamal. Be a voice for those who their voices have been silenced. And be a global citizen like Jamal was. Care about other people. And make it a motto. An attack on someone because of their creed, religion, or color, no matter where they are, is an attack on all of you. That's how we remember Jamal, by protecting his legacy and by living his example. Thank you.
Next, we have a speech by human rights activist Iyad el-Baghdadi. Unfortunately, he could not be with us today and has recorded his speech for us to broadcast at the ceremony.
I tried my best to be with you today. Sometimes it's wise for us to know what we can change and what we have to accept. That's a lesson I learned from you, Jamal, when we disagreed about what young people should be doing, and you told me that they should not get themselves arrested. They should focus on their careers, focus on themselves, and wait for the right moment, because the dictators are going to keep creating crisis after crisis, eventually creating a crisis big enough that will be able to damage them enough, and then they'll be on the retreat. I just never thought that the right moment is going to come around because they killed you. Let me do something that I've never done before. Let me talk to you as one of us. Not as the regime sympathizer that I thought you were, and not as the journalist that you insisted that you are, but as a member of our community, as an Arab Spring activist. Jamal, years from now, decades from now, we're going to be talking about before Jamal and after Jamal. The only solace that we can think about is, had you written 1,000 op-eds at the Washington Post, it would not have led to this much outcry. It would not have damaged them this much. What's before Jamal is not like what's after Jamal. After Jamal, the lines are drawn. بعد جمال تمايزت الصفوف.
Next, we welcome Nobel Peace Prize laureate Tawakkul Karman to the podium. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. A whole year has passed since the awfulest and most humiliating crime took place when the journalist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. He was lured into his country's consulate, where he was killed and cut in a horrific way. No country can do this. No country, no matter how brutal and barbaric, would commit this crime. Only ISIS could do that. No country other than the Saudi kingdom could be like ISIS, emulate and inspire from it, and inspire it. It can be said that the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi with such barbarity and atrocity has raised all human conscience and received the sympathy, solidarity, and condemnation of everyone in the land. Jamal Khashoggi's soul and blood was able to undermine his killers, and they are here a rogue regime, not rogue individuals. His blood managed to strike at the rogue regime a global isolation and undermine all Salman's efforts in polishing and promoting him as a leader of a new era of the kingdom and a leader of a different era based on urbanization and openness. The murderer, who is a rogue regime from the top of the pyramid, will appear only in front of the world's criminal and murderer, and his image will remain in their mind, that bearer of soul, to dismember the opponents and cut off their bodies. This is the eternal image of bin Salman in human memory. And this image had practically put an end to all bin Salman's political ambitions. It is true that billions of Saudi rogue regime have succeeded in buying the silence of international community. Unfortunately, great countries that present themselves as sponsors of rights and freedoms and leader of free world in a very unfortunate and painful process, but they have failed and will always fail to wash off crime and erase it from the memory of people with their soft living and effective powers, which is more severe and impact. Fortunately, the world is not government and official organizations. In Salman's influence and the wealth of his own regime, and by their silence for a few or all of the time. The world is a great people, and the vivid and soft media and civil organizations who will follow the criminals, who will achieve justice for Jamal. Finally, the government that orchestrated the brutal murder of Saudi journalists
In the name of Allah, for more than 30 years, I have known Jamal. We were colleagues, and we had the same view, and we were friends for life. I knew him in 1987. We started our career as journalists. We rediscovered our friendship in 1992.
عندما عاد من رحلة طويلة للجزائر كان يتابع فيها الانتخابات الجزائرية والانقلاب الذي حدث على نتائج هذه الانتخابات.
After he were back from a covering for the election in Algeria and the coup that happened and the experience that happened in Algeria at that time, the military coup.
في هذا التاريخ حدث تغير كبير في حياة جمال وفي طريقة تفكيره، وكان حزينا بشدة على فكرة الانقلاب على أمل الديمقراطية التي كانت بدت في الجزائر ثم انتهت في الجزائر أيضا في نفس الوقت بفعل تدخل الجيش في الحياة السياسية.
That experience really shocked Jamal, and he was deeply and in sorrow because of that experience, because that coup, that military coup, ended up the new democratic experience in the Arab world.
قال لي جمال في هذا الوقت: سأهب ما تبقى من حياتي دفاعا عن حق الناس في الاختيار في المنطقة العربية.
Jamal told me that I will dedicate my life or whatever left of it defending people's right in choice and freedom of choice and their freedom.
بعد 18 سنة أن الشعوب العربية يمكن أن تحكم نفسها لأول مرة بنفسها.
Jamal was excited again 18 years after the first phase of the Arab Spring. He was more excited and he had enthusiasm and he defended the idea.
أعتقد أن موقف جمال من الربيع العربي هو كلمة السر في بداية الصدام الكبير بينه وبين النظام السعودي الذي كان يتخذ موقفا معاديا للربيع العربي، بل أنفق المليارات لإجهاض هذا الربيع وتحديدا في مصر.
In my opinion, the reason behind the problem between Jamal and the Saudi regime is the Arab World Spring. This is the password. This is the reason behind that problem and conflict. And in my opinion, that reason also is very, very clear because that regime spent so much money, billions of dollars, to assassinate the dream in Egypt, the dream of freedom in Egypt.
لهذا لم تكن مفاجأة لموقف الإعلام الحكومي الرسمي المصري من جمال خاشقجي الذي بلغ حد تهديده والتحريض على قتله قبل قتله بأسابيع قليلة جدا.
The status of the Egyptian media didn't caught me in surprise at all because they hinted and said explicitly that they really encouraged for the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi even weeks before his death.
في 2017 قال لي جمال عندما حضر إلى اسطنبول أن محمد بن سلمان وسعود القحطاني في لقاء خاص معهم، وكان آخر لقاء له مع محمد بن سلمان، أبلغه باستيائه من تكرار زيارات جمال لي في اسطنبول وسأله عن سر هذه العلاقة.
And in 2017, Jamal told me that Saud al-Qahtani and Mohammed bin Salman called him and asked him several times, why is he meeting me? What about this friendship between me and him? And
جمال أجاب إجابة عبقرية لن أنساها ما حييت. كتب على انستجرام تدوينة قصيرة قال: أيمن نور صديقي منذ 500 عام تجمعنا الصداقة ووحدة الرؤية وحب الحرية.
Jamal's reply was very, very genius. He plugged on Instagram a photo and wrote under it, "We are friends since 500 years ago. We are colleagues, and this friendship has something to do also with the view that and the status that we have."
العدالة التي نطلبها لجمال خاشقجي اليوم بعد مرور سنة على واقعة اغتياله ليست هي محاسبة صغار المسؤولين اللي قدمتهم النيابة للتحقيق أو للمحاكمة، ولا حتى محاسبة سعود القحطاني، ولا حتى محاسبة الذي حرض على هذه الجريمة محمد بن سلمان.
In my opinion, the request and demand for justice in the name of Jamal Khashoggi and his cause is not at all calling for a judging or taking to court those people who committed the tools, the middle officers, or even that decision made by the public general prosecution. It's not at all like that, or even bringing to court Muhammad al-Qahtani or Saud al-Qahtani or Muhammad bin Salman. This is not the idea or the case.
العدالة التي نطلبها لجمال هي الانتصار للقضية التي منح جمال حياته وضحى بعمره دفاعا عنها، وهي قضية الحرية، قضية الديمقراطية في هذه المنطقة العربية.
But justice for Jamal, it means supporting the cause that he sacrificed his life in the name of it. And this is the cause of freedom in our Arab world.
أقول لصديقي جمال بعد عام من غيابه أنه ما زال حاضرا في القلب وفي العقل.
Oh Jamal, you are with us, in our minds, in our heart.
أقول لصديقي جمال أن أول لحظة سلام عليك يا جمال ورحمة الله وبركاته.
O Jamal, rest in peace.
Next, we welcome former Al Jazeera director and Al-Sharq Forum president Vada Kamfar to the podium. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If Jamal was with us today, he would have said the following: I am proud to be a journalist. I am proud to belong to this profession that stood for the cause of freedom and democracy and demanding justice for Jamal and for those who Jamal stood for. Thank you all. All of us today have become the voice that Jamal wanted the world to hear. They wanted him not to have a grave, but eventually, in every heart, he has today a shrine. They wanted him to disappear, but his image and his voice is chasing them everywhere. Now I give you the good news. The best allies for revolution are dictators, because they are very, very stupid. And the ones that we have in the Arab world have extra stupidity. So today, 1 year later, the good news is that the second phase of the Arab Spring has started. Jamal has predicted this, and Jamal didn't know that his murder will be a trigger of something huge and big like this one. The voices of everyone around us, in the streets of our cities, in the valleys and the mountains of the Arab world, and across the world, of those who understand the meaning of freedom as a way of life and as a cost of death as well, is continuing. Thank you all. Thank you for those who have joined us from all over the world today to stand here and to say that we shall never forget Jamal, neither we are going to forget the cause and mission that Jamal stood for. Thank you very much.
Next, we welcome the publisher and CEO of the Washington Post, Fred Ryan. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here today with so many people whose lives have been touched by Jamal Khashoggi. I'm also grateful to be on this stage with so many champions of press freedom. We appreciate the work that all of you do every day to promote the safety and independence of journalists in every country. At the Washington Post, we deeply mourn Jamal's loss. His readers knew him as a talented columnist, and those who worked with him knew him as a trusted colleague and a dear friend. It is meaningful that we are joined today by Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post. Jeff has been resolute in standing for courageous and independent journalism around the world. I would especially like to thank Khadija, a brave woman whose time of great joy was transformed into a terrifying nightmare. From the depths of your anguish, you found incredible strength and determination. You have searched unceasingly for answers about Jamal's murder and have done everything in your power to spread his message about the importance of a free press. Your dedication has inspired us all. As others have so eloquently stated, this is a dark moment for those who depend on the work of a free press. Journalists are under threat, not only in this region, but around the world. They encounter censorship, harassment, and violence for doing a job that is essential to our freedom. In every part of the world, authoritarian rulers are increasing their grip on the press, trying to prevent reporters from holding the powerful to account. Even in the United States, which was always a champion of press freedom, the government has shown rising levels of hostility. Leaders across the globe must know and understand that journalists are not enemies of the people. As Jamal's work so clearly showed, journalists are servants of the people and the democratic principles that empower the people. When people have access only to information that supplied or approved by their governments, their worlds and possibilities are limited to what the government allows them to know. The only way to escape this tyranny, the only way to have free and independent lives, is to guarantee free and independent journalism. After Jamal's killing and the indifference some world leaders have shown, it may be tempting to become cynical or even defeatist. But it is worth remembering an important lesson from history. Sometimes a single event can ignite a movement. It can be a catalyst that brings about sweeping changes that endure for generations. Standing here so close to the site of an act of pure evil is not easy for any of us, because the sorrow we feel over Jamal's killing is every bit as real today as it was 1 year ago. But as we gather at this memorial to honor Jamal's life, let's commit here and now to making this a catalyzing moment. Let Jamal's life and its taking advance a movement that strengthens human rights and expands press freedom across the globe. All of us can start by remaining relentless in pursuit of the truth about Jamal's killing. Just as he showed courage and resolve in his journalism, we must remain fearless and steadfast in demanding accountability for his murder. For journalists, carrying forward Jamal's legacy means not be intimidated into silence. That is exactly what those behind Jamal's assassination want. That is why they killed him. Instead, journalists must keep asking the next question, keep digging into corruption, keep demanding responsibilities for crimes and abuses of power. Journalists put their lives at risk every day because of the conflict zones they cover, the powerful people they challenge, and the wrongdoings.
It is unimaginable And you need to know that you are in our hearts. We are here, and you are not alone.
Finally, we are honored to welcome Hatice Cengiz, the fiancée of the late Jamal Khashoggi. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. I am at peace when I see you all. All these amazing and beautiful people know Jamal as a journalist, as a writer, as an activist, and a great friend and human being. But to me, he was much more than that. He was my best friend. He was the love of my life. I still love him. I remember how he had so much to say, but he was a great listening. He was supposed to be my guide in life. In his life and work, he was always calling for better conditions for people in his country. He was a prominent voice calling for freedom of expression and more accountability of the state. Why he didn't succeed in his life is happening now in his death. All the world's eyes are on the kingdom, and this issue, these disagrees, follows them everywhere. Last year today, I was standing here. I was a girl in law waiting for my man to come out of the consulate. We wanted to go to dinner. We wanted to invite our friends to our wedding. Now, after a worst year in my life, I stand here, broken but proud. Proud to see you all here, and with you all, I still seek justice. I want to know what happened to his body. I want his friends to be released from jails. I want that those in power are held accountable for their actions. Thank you so much. Now, I invite you to join me and unveil a small state stone dedicated to Jamal's memory, I think inside the garden. Yeah, inside the garden.
Thank you, everyone. We ask that you please remain seated while our speakers make their way to Jamal's memorial stone. For security reasons, we cannot allow any press into the grass area. Please remain seated.